as you know, we've been working our way through this series, Living Our Vision. And this is something that's happening right across the Salvation Army. And 2 weeks ago, Donna launched into Why a Vision, and then Karen and preached last week about the first parts of this vision. Now, this vision is a statement that's across all the Salvation Army, all across Australia. So they wanted to come up with a statement or a thumbprint that says this is who we are and this is what we're heading for. Let's read it out together. Wherever there is Now, I reckon that's the kind of place I want to belong to. So wherever you see the red shield, they are aiming for, this is what we're aiming for. This is what we stand for. And today, we're going to unpack the next line of this idea of live, love, and fight. And I was thinking about that. And I was thinking, what's a good passage that I could actually bring out that's etched in our DNA, something that says this is who we are. This is the kind of thing we stand for. And I thought about the Good Samaritan. And I think that says a lot about us. That idea of, if you don't know the Good Samaritan story, I think it's Luke chapter 10. You can see it. And it's this idea, and Jesus tells this parable about a man who is left robbed and bashed on the side of the road. And the first two people come and see him and decide to go the other way. Almost like saying, actually, that's a little difficult. And then the third one comes, and I suppose this is saying this is what the real brother in Christ looks like. This is what being a true disciple means. And he actually sees this man. He picks him up. He takes him on his donkey and takes him to get help. And I thought, is that it? And as I thought about it more, I thought, look, that kind of says live and love, doesn't it? It's nice. What a beautiful thing for this guy to do. And I thought, you know what, like, if it had a theme song, if there was something that said, the Good Samaritan picking someone up, we're now friends, I'm going to look after you. If we had a theme song, it'd be like this. You with me? Now, I used it last night, and when we were driving home, Bailey said to me, Dad, where'd you find that wussy song? I said, mate, that was actually a hit once. Not on my watch, he says. But it's nice, isn't it? And it's loving and it's kind. But there's no real sign of a fight there. It sort of says live and love, but actually we're saying that we're going to live, love and fight. So I kind of think if we're going to have a theme song for something that's live, love and fight, it's going to be more like this. All right? Now that says live, love and fight, doesn't it? Who wants to sign up to that vision? All right? Now, it's nothing against the Good Samaritan. It's got a space. But I don't think it's for our vision today. And now Megan's going to come up and she's going to share with us a passage. And it's from Mark chapter 5. And I think it actually resonates more with who we're called to be. Mark chapter 5. And she wants the lectern. So let me move that.
They went across the lake to the region of Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs and no one could bind him anymore, and not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send him out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on a nearby hillside. The demon begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged him to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed.
Thank you, Megan. Now that's a live, love, fight story. That's what it looks like. And I'm going to unpack that in the next couple of minutes so we get a better understanding of what this means to us and what the Salvos vision means to our movement. So here is Jesus. He'd not long pulled the boat up on the shore. In fact, the verses before say that he'd spent the night in a fierce storm. Probably a lack of sleep, bashed around. He pulls the boat up on the shore with the disciples. And this is not an area known for where Jews would hang out. And here he is. Very soon, he barely gets away from the shore and he's confronted by this desperate need. There was the spiritual torment of a demon that had destroyed this man both physically and socially. And Jesus is confronted with this. You see, the community around this poor man, they tried some Band-Aid options. They tried chaining him up. But they were pushed to despair because he needed greater help. He needed something that his community couldn't offer. And as he pushes his way through the crowd and gets to Jesus' feet, we have this picture of this naked man, disfigured. The blood from his cutting the night before just congealing on his body. It seems like all hope is gone. And here he is falling at Jesus' feet, asking for help. At this point, Jesus forgets the crowd. And he forgets the boat. Because his attention is focused on this one man. His attention is all about the desperate need that's hunched down in front of him. Friends, when I think about this first part of the vision, this idea of living, what does it say? As Salvos, we live. I think it's all about proximity. It's not saying sell up and go and move to the darkest, hardest places. It's not saying go and live in a cave. But it's saying at some point we have to be there. At some point we have to be available. You see, Jesus, he didn't read about this guy in the Jerusalem Times and go, oh, that's a bit difficult. Oh, I better offer him a prayer. As good as having Jesus pray for you is, he saw that there was something greater. You see, this was about Jesus looking this guy in the eye. You see, when I think about social justice, poverty, helping people in desperate need, I don't know about you, when I see it on the TV, it kind of washes over. But when I'm looking it in the eye, when I'm sitting next to the person on the couch, when I'm holding their hand while they cry, it all becomes kind of real. Jesus couldn't have impacted this guy from afar. You've got to be in proximity. Friends, the conversation changes when we live amongst those in need. The conversation changes from, oh, we're putting together a hamper for the poor, to, I'm buying these groceries for Jenny because she's doing it tough at the moment. You see the difference? When you can put a name and a face to the problem, it becomes real. And the vision's telling us that we need to be places where we see the need face to face. It's one thing to hear about it. It's another thing to live amongst it. So here's Jesus, right? He's looking this guy in the eyes, face to face. He's no hope. He's completely broken. They've tried everything. Chaining him, that didn't work. Sticking him in a cave, that didn't work either. But there's something inside Jesus that he cannot turn away from. He can't call this, he can't put it in the too hard basket. He can't, this wasn't a publicity stunt. It'd be good for his I can't think of the word. It'd be good for his social expression to have a selfie with this guy. This wasn't a chance just to rip into the Pharisees. This is Jesus living out his calling to release the captives, to bind up the brokenhearted, and to shine light into dark places. Because that's who he was called to be. And standing right in front of him is a guy that fits every part of that. And out of a heart's desire to see this man healthy, whole, and transformed, Jesus steps into the ring with a demon. And after a fierce confrontation, Jesus, with compassion, focuses on the man and gives him all that he needs to confront and destroy and defeat that which has held him down his whole life. When I think about the idea of love in this vision, to me it's all about motivation. Doing the loving thing. You see, Jesus didn't care what other people thought. He didn't care who was watching. But something stirred inside him when he looked this guy in the face. He could see something welled up and he could see, I need to do something. Out of that, you can't sit on the sideline, can you? So you see, when love is your motivation, it doesn't matter what it costs. It doesn't matter who it might offend. It doesn't matter how messy it might get. Because you don't think about those things when it comes from here. You just dive in. Let's just put it in perspective for a second. Because the Bible tells us that for Jesus to heal this guy, a herd of pigs are destroyed. So let's just think that through for a second. A whole family, in fact 2,000 of them, maybe a whole community's livelihood was lost that day. When those pigs ran down the hill so that one man could be saved. You see, when we do stuff out of a heart of love, when we as a movement and we personally are compelled to love people like this, there's going to be a cost. It's going to hit us somewhere. It could be financial. It could be social. It could be socially, as friends start to question, why would you do that? Why would you go there? Why would you invite them? Why would you say no to me so you can say yes to that person? What's the cost of a heart stirred to love? It might be your time. It might be what you have to give up. And it might be what we have to walk away from. What I do know is that when God stirs your heart, when you look need in the face and something happens inside of you, the cost becomes insignificant. Because when hope, freedom and transformation is underpinning what we do, the herd of pigs don't matter. So here's Jesus, right? He's right in the thick of it here. He's going toe to toe with Legion, which is the demon of all demons, the demon of many demons. See, Jesus knows that the root of this man's physical and social issues is this spiritual one. There's a spiritual battle about to happen, and Jesus is looking it in the eye. You see, other people had come and tried to fix this guy with the social and the physical. But there was a gap. So Jesus go straight for the spiritual. Now, we sang just a moment ago about the lion and the lamb. The lamb being the God of comfort, the lion being the God of strength and fight. Well, at this point, the lamb takes a step back and the lion comes to the front, because that's our God. He steps up when there's a fight in the spiritual realm. You know, Jesus shows his power over the devil. He shows his power over demons and the dark forces of this world. And he steps up to the plate. But it didn't all end in celebration. You see, while this man's life was transformed, the crowd was filled with anger, uncertainty, they were filled with shame. In fact, they wanted Jesus to go. Jesus had just done something they weren't able to, and their way of saying thanks is, mate, get back in your boat. You see, despite all that Jesus had done, he was ushered to the shore. And as he gets back in this boat, I can just see his eyes fixed on this restored man. Healthy, whole. He'd just been commissioned by Jesus as an evangelist. Son, go into the towns and tell them what Jesus has done for you today. Now, you can't come with me. You need to go. So as we consider what does it mean to fight, what's the fight in this story that we can cling on to? You know, if we're going to live, love and fight, what does that look like? Well, I'll tell you what it looks like. Firstly, what we need to understand more than anything else is that we are still in a war against sin and death. Our fight is not against flesh and blood, but against the evil forces of this world. We are not the people to bring the Band-Aid solutions, because there's people in desperate need of spiritual renewal. And don't for a second think that these days are over. We will be deceived if we think that was just for then. If ever there was a time when Christians need to be challenged into this spiritual fight, it is now. You know, there's a lot of great agencies out there that are going to look after the social and the physical. But that's not who God called us to be. We are to be people that preach Jesus, and that we are to impact people with spiritual renewal. You know, when I think of the idea of a fight, I think of an army taking ground. And that's what we're called to do, to take ground in the dark world with light. Because this is who we are. This is what God has called us to be. So the first part of this fight is a spiritual fight. And please, for a second, don't think that those social and other needs don't matter. But we are kidding ourselves if we don't look at things head on with the spiritual fight that we're called to. And secondly, the second part of this fight, we need to understand that it gets messy to fight. If it was all easy, it wouldn't need a fight. Look at the crowd pushing back against Jesus. So it wasn't just a fight with the demon. It was a fight with the crowd. Not everyone's happy when God starts to move in someone's life. Not everyone's happy when the Salvation Army comes to town. When we start calling for social change, for things to be different. When you start shining light into dark places, there's people who aren't happy about it and they will push back. There's a fight. And sometimes we need to be prepared to dig in. Rather than just, wasn't meant to be. No, sometimes it is. And what I know is the times when I've had to fight, that's when my prayer life goes up, I rely on God more, and I'm more attuned to seeing what He can do. And when we get through the fight, I'm more open to saying, God, I could not have done that on my own. You were there with me. When you dig in for the fight, what I know at that point, that's when the conversation changes. You can actually hear it in people's voice. When they go from this idea of, whatever God's will is. When they actually feel that conviction, no, this is where God wants us to be for this time and this space. The conversation changes. You hear things like, I'm going to fight for my marriage. I'm going to fight for that person. Or I'm not going to rest until we make that right. I will not let that happen to you. Not on my watch. They're the phrases of a person or a movement that says, we are going to fight for what's right. Because that's the reality, isn't it? It may not be easy, but that doesn't mean it's not right. There's nothing about this that's a popularity contest. And we need to be prepared to fight, to dig in, even when it's tough. So as we consider this man standing on the beach, his life transformed. All he wanted to do was stay close to Jesus. But Jesus said, no, you need to go. Go back. Go into the towns. Share the good news. Share what Jesus has done for you. And friends, this is the good news. Here's the good news. That the same Jesus who had an encounter with this man, who stepped out of the boat and changed his world so that he could go on living happy, healthy, whole, and impacting other people. That same Jesus is available to each one of us. So as the band comes up, I want to leave you with these questions. Because I'm thinking there's probably some people here today. There's some people here today who might feel like that demon-possessed man. That for years you've been tormented by something. And you've carried it. And you've dragged it along behind you. And you've tried this and you've tried that. Maybe today is the day when Jesus meets you and says, enough. And then I reckon there's probably some people here today. You know Jesus is real, and you've been getting bashed around by stuff. and you thought, actually, I just got to, God, whatever your will be done. Well, maybe today's the day that God actually says, you know what, I'm with you in the fight. Today's the day you got to dig in. And I reckon there might even be some people here today who they're in the fight. They know they've signed up to take ground. They might be fighting for their children, fighting for a loved one. They can see their face. And today you just are being challenged to come forward and pray for that person, to offer them again at the altar. Wherever you see yourself in the story, one thing I know is that God does not leave you. God wants to meet you and be with you in that. So as the band plays, if God's touched your heart this morning, you might want to come. If you want to recommit something, you need protection on the spiritual sense, we want to anoint you with oil as a sign of saying, you don't do this alone, but God, our God, will renew a covenant with you.